Hello, everybody. Welcome to Houston. We have a problem livecast 35. I hope you all had a chance to read the link that I put in the description about the quarterly gamma squeeze. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of it, but it is so phenomenally written. Somebody else sent me a link of another one that talks about similar things that was posted about an hour ago on Reddit. I haven't had a chance to go through it too much. But basically, the idea is that a whole bunch of this shorting isn't happening by directly selling naked shares, although a lot of it is. That a bunch of it is put into these weird equity swaps, where a prime broker will generate a whole bunch of synthetic shares, and then a hedge fund will sort of lease the rights to this block of synthetic shares, and they, by paying a fee, they then get the rights to the profit on these securities. And so what it does is it makes it so the hedge funds and the prime brokers do not have to report these naked shares to anybody, and that the short interest isn't affected, and they don't necessarily even have to report the holdings to anyone. So there's no liabilities measured, and there are no assets measured. So they can basically hide these positions from everyone as a result. And in those hidden positions is where a lot of these liabilities actually lie. So it's tied into the futures contracts that reset every quarter. I'm still trying to wrap my head around those, but the futures contracts, you have to be locked in by like September 9th, and then the contracts are honored on the 19th, I guess. And there's a window between essentially now and the 9th to either roll over or purchase enough shares to honor the contracts. So we get like a gamma squeeze that happens once a quarter around this time. And that's why we saw a big green yesterday, and we saw a big green at the end of May, and we saw a big green at the end of February, is that each time these future contracts are up to either be exercised or rolled over, we see a huge push to buy physical shares to honor those contracts. There's a lot of info in those Reddit posts, but I'm gonna have to reread it again and again and again to really wrap my head around it. But this is sort of where we might be operating on. Now, the one that I linked to, the author suggests that this time around, because the economy is so precarious, because we are facing the Delta variant, we're facing a debt crisis, we're facing a corporate debt bubble, we've got a bank liquidity crisis, we have a whole bunch of these things all kind of converging at once: housing crisis, supply chain crisis, inflation, that if the Dow takes a big dip between now and the 9th, when these futures contracts finally get locked in, that it might not drop after we see a big push in the stock. And each quarter, the squeeze that happens, this gamma squeeze that happens, gets more serious and starts a few days earlier. And if you've been like day trading GME or AMC, and you bought in February or beginning of January, and you sold after during the quarterly squeeze in February, and then you bought again when it bottomed out, and you sold again during the quarterly squeeze at the end of May, and you let that bottom out, and you bought again in July when it bottomed out, and then you're waiting for it to squeeze again, you might not get the opportunity to sell and buy lower this time around, because if the Dow drops, then margin calls go out, and because we got this liquidity crisis, these hedge funds may not be able to meet the capital requirements to on their margins, and so they may force liquidation, and then forced buying might occur, and if that happens, then the stock price won't drop; it'll just keep rocketing. So that's kind of the underlying thesis in that piece, as far as I can understand it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because these equity swaps are a different bear, and they're kind of secretive and they're not regulated, and they also seem to be a big old basket of hot potato that gets moved around from fund to fund, from broker to broker, and they just kind of bounce this thing around. You just don't want to be the last one holding the bag when the music stops. So that's where we are. That's my update on that. I highly recommend reading it and read it like 10 times. I've got a few more reads of it tonight to really try to get it to sink into my head, because these tools, these securities, these swaps are weird. They are weird. Yes. Okay. All right. And I want to thank everybody. We raised $2,455 yesterday for Second Story. Like, that was phenomenal. I want to thank everyone so much for doing that. That is, like, it blows my mind. We went, what, like 13 times almost what I was hoping to raise. You guys are awesome. That is essentially like 1% of that entire charity's operating budget that helps over 100 kids a year escape abuse and get therapy they need. It's just absolutely wonderful. You just saved a bunch of lives right there. So great job. Fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. We'll do another one in September. We'll do another Tuesday charity show, and I'll find a good charity that we can celebrate with. So, okay, let's get into the feed here. Let's see what everyone's talking about. Okay. Jeff Amen, Houston, I reviewed this case study about Sears. Could you review it? It's only a page, but essentially it says shareholders will get zero. You have to send it to me. I have no idea what that is. DM it to me on Twitter at the Wooston. I'll take a look at it. Everything I've seen suggests that they've got more assets than liabilities. And once those liabilities are taken care of, shareholders should get everything else. So, I mean, bankruptcies are weird, though. We'll see exactly how much they actually owe. Cancel Bubble asks, have you ever found a meteorite? How would one identify a meteorite? Is there something one should do if they think they found a meteorite? Any hotbeds to hunt for them in the Pacific Northwest? I have never found one. I've held them. I've met people who have found a bunch of them, but I've never really gone out to look for them. Although good places to go to look for them are snowfields, like permanent packed snowfields. So expeditions go to Antarctica every year, and if you find a rock on top of the snow, it must have come from up there, because that snow's been falling for 2 million years. How did the rock bubble up from underneath? Dry lake beds are a great place. So we don't really have any dry lake beds in Washington, but in Oregon there's a few. The biggest one is on the east side of Steens Mountain. I think it's just called Steens Lake or something like that, or Steens Salt Flat. That's in like the southeast corner of Oregon. There have been big meteorites that have fallen. We had one a couple years ago go over the Northwest and explode just off the coast. I was actually on the toilet when it went by, sitting there enjoying my time, and I saw this thing go right past. Like, whoa, it's daylight, and the whole sky just lit up again. And then about a minute later, I heard a kagoom as it exploded over the ocean. And then one near me, I'll bring up the old Google Earth here. Seen? Google Earth? Come on. Google Earth. There we go. All right. Oh, we're still in the Black Sea. Black Sea from yesterday. Go over here. And we got to go to Tracington. So a couple years ago, a decently sized one, maybe grapefruit to basketball sized, went kersploosh right here in the daylight near Tracington, Washington. It's a tiny little town here. And it went in probably 20 to 40 feet of water. And my guess is probably, between a grapefruit and a basketball. And a meteorite like that is worth millions. So anybody who's a commercial diver or a recreational diver, if you want to go diving out here and try to find that sucker, you can retire off of that. I'm not a certified diver, and I've only been diving once. So anybody who knows what they're doing, go to Tracyton, Washington, just off the shore there, and look for a meteorite down there. Um, that one was witnessed by dozens of people who saw it hit the water. There was a big one not too long ago that exploded somewhere over Winthrop. Uh, so when those things explode in the sky, they rain down, kind of like the big meteorite that was in Russia in 2013, out in Siberia that exploded. Dozens of pieces of it were found. Beyond that, it's really hard to look for meteorites in Seattle because there's so much vegetation. And the vegetation in the Northwest just covers everything. The leaves fall down, and trees fall down, and dust and dirt and debris and all sorts of stuff just covers these things. So finding meteorites in like the evergreen part of the evergreen state is very hard. It's probably much easier out in eastern Washington where it's drier. And there's less debris, and most of it's like exposed 16 million year old basalt without much topsoil. So if meteorites are out there, they might be easier to find. A great way to look for them is to look for look for iron meteorites is with metal detectors. There's a place called like Meteorite Valley in Arizona. I think it's Meteorite Valley. It's somewhere in like northwest Arizona where a big meteorite impact happened, and people find little chunks of it all the time with metal detectors. Dry lake beds in California, Nevada, and Utah are awesome places to look for meteorites. So you just look for rocks sitting on top of the lake bed, and a lot of times those can be meteorites. Stony meteorites are much harder to identify without, taking pieces of them and putting them into mass spectrometers. But iron meteorites usually have a very telltale look to them, and they're magnetic, and they're heavy, and they're metal. And those are the former cores of broken apart planets and planetoids. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's my meteorite. Even though I never found one, those are the things you look for. Back to Big Houston. Okay. Ryan Drake super chats. If MOASS happens and suddenly millions of normal people have tons of money, how could that affect us? Seems like inflation, unemployment would skyrocket more. Well, I'm not sure if unemployment would skyrocket because suddenly a whole bunch of people that don't need to work won't be working. So it might be the opposite. We might see a whole bunch of job openings, even more than we have right now, for lots of work, because the folks that were doing those jobs, they told their boss to shove it. And my guess is that the folks who win from this, a lot of them will be starting their own companies or helping fund friends and family to start their own companies, and that'll cause a hiring craze. There may be inflation because right now we've got a huge chunk of wealth. There's a few billionaires, a couple hundred billionaires in the U.S., and if the MOASS happens the way a lot of us think it will, we might add several thousand more billionaires to that mix, and 1 million, 4 million, 5 million more millionaires. And that is a lot of money to go into a lot of hands at once. Now, what people do with that money is probably going to be all over the place. There's probably some folks who will squirrel it away and reinvest it. There are other folks who are like, you know what, I'm going on a spending spree. And they're buying Lamborghinis and houses and partying and, funding movies and whatever else they might do. And then there's, the people who may not change their lifestyle. So I guess there's going to be a whole mix of personalities involved in there. And will we see inflation? I don't know. There might be some things that get inflated, like the cost of Lamborghinis. But other things, if the Dow takes a huge giant shit when MOASS happens, then there could be a whole bunch of issues with, let's say, credit crunches, so people can't buy things. So the cost of homes might actually go down because they can't get mortgages, which means you can't get bidding wars, which means no one's buying houses. You might not be able to get loans for a car, might not have access to credit cards or home equity loans or small business loans. And so there may be a lack of money going through the economy for the general public because, the 4 to 10 million people who are going to win off GameStop, there's still going to be 340 million Americans and 8 billion people around the world who don't benefit from this in the same way. And they may have to reduce spending, personal spending. So we may see consumer goods drop, we may see oil drop, we may see construction of new housing grind to a halt. And so a lot of these main financial indicators, so we might see a contraction rather than inflation deflation. Might see the dollar strengthen a bit during that time. It's really hard to like picture where, like, what moving parts in this weird equation are going to trigger as a result of this. My brain is like cooking at all times trying to figure out what type of world will result from the MOASS. And it's just a cloud. The crystal ball is really foggy right now. I really can't figure out where it's going to head from here. But it's interesting things to start thinking about. Try to figure out how many variables at play and which ones am I missing. What are the known unknowns in that equation? What's that Donald Rumsfeld quote? There are known unknowns that we don't know and we can't know them, or something like that. I don't know. All right. There goes meteorite question. Okay, Daniel Motes, Houston, happy birthday. Thank you. All right, happy birthday wishes. Can hedge funds pull out money from the Cayman stash houses to help their liquidity issues? I don't know if they'll want to, right? Because I think those Cayman accounts are possibly there to represent capital controlled by the hedge funds, but are also there to be a life raft for them to cut free and set adrift. So when problems happen with the hedge funds, the hedge fund managers go, oh no, I guess we're toast. And then they go and hug their money that's in their Cayman account and let their clients sort of suffer. That's my prevailing hypothesis as to what those offshore accounts are going to be used for. They're life rafts for these hedge fund managers, and they're not at all there to help their clients. Their clients will. I mean, I'll be curious to see how many billionaires vanish from MOASS. Like how many of these hedge funds, like how many of these billionaires have so much of their wealth tied up in these hedge funds that when those hedge funds get liquidated of everything, their wealth just goes poof. And they are all of a sudden, panhandling on the street or something. My guess is they still have some offshore cash accounts if they are as evil as we presume. So maybe they've got some backup, some emergency funds. I'll be curious to see. Curious to see what happens. Crafted Genius asks, happy birthday, Houston. My question to test your wrinkles. Why does Michael Burry buy back into GME? I think because Michael Burry sees the writing on the wall. I think he looked at the fundamentals and went, the economy is going to take a big dump. You want to invest in negative beta stocks, and these things are going to short squeeze as a result because the fundamentals require it. And that's my guess why he jumped back in. He's been sounding the siren that this economy's been propped up through essentially little tiny flimsy ribbons for too long. Prior to COVID, we were having a corporate debt bubble problem where corporations, rather than taking their money, their profits, and giving them as dividends or reinvesting it into research and development and improving their own capital, they were taking that money and doing stock buybacks. So they were inflating the price of their stock by creating artificial demand for that stock so that their executives could meet price targets and get huge bonuses. And 109% of corporate profits were spent on stock buybacks. This means that not only were corporate profits spent on stock buybacks, but they were borrowing money specifically to do stock buybacks and inflate the price on these stocks. This stuff was going to come to a head, and then COVID hit. And COVID dropped the economy like a rock. The Dow dropped 37% in like 2 weeks, and was going to drop further. So the U.S. government had to start printing money like crazy, and they printed money and printed money and printed money and just dumped it into the economy. Dumped it into our pockets. They dumped it into banks. They dumped it into corporations through PPP loans and things like that. And so the economy has been like floating on this like pile of money drifting around, and it's all kind of fake. It's a stopgap measure. It's a finger in the dike that's leaking, and we don't really have like a fundamental reason for why the stock market has been steadily improving, because the corporate debt bubble still exists. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. We've got inflation that's happening like crazy. We've got the U.S. government that, for some reason, won't take swift action and raise the corporate debt bubble. And we've got a housing crisis where upwards of 40 million Americans may be facing homelessness by October. We've got credit crunches happening at banks where they can't offer, home equity loans, car loans, private lines of credit, personal lines of credit. They're getting rid of credit card offers. So we've got a whole bunch of things that are kind of hairy, and only one of those suckers have to trip and fall on their face, and then Michael Burry is right. And that's kind of the state we're in at the moment. The U.S. government could just print money forever and keep this thing afloat, but inflation will probably catch up to us eventually, and that will make all sorts of problems. Especially right now that we have more job openings than people who can fill those jobs. And we're going to finally see a significant, I think, wage increases in the near term, and we haven't seen in 20 years. So, yeah. VWAP Sear. Significance of JPMorgan Securities closing clearing accounts on September 1st, confirming by DTCC today. I like the timing. I saw that just before I came on, someone sent me a screenshot of the filing saying they're going to be closing their mortgage-backed securities clearing. I haven't been able to see what that specifically entails. If somebody else has a great link to some DD, I'd love to read that. And what does that mean? Because does that mean is that part of their moving away from the DTCC and their subsidiaries and forming their own clearinghouse? Maybe, I don't know. I'll have to find someone who is smarter than me to explain it to me like I'm an idiot, so I know what's going on. And Will super chats. Houston, in what scenario do you see MOASS not happening with the manipulation, FTDs, etc.? It doesn't seem as inevitable as it once did. I don't think it can not happen. That's how I want to phrase that. Because there's so much awful, weird debt that these hedge funds have taken on, and the banks have taken on, and the prime brokers have taken on, that it can't last forever. It's gonna come falling down, just like the mortgage-backed securities came falling down. They thought that was gonna last forever, and they were going to be able to ignore and push this stuff off, and it all came to a head. It always does. It always comes to a head eventually. That's the nature of the books needing to balance in the end. So how long they can push it off, I don't know. The swings that seem to be happening each quarter seem to be getting a little more violent and a little steeper, and they happen a little earlier before these quarterly rollovers for the futures contracts. And I'm really buying into that hypothesis that these quarterly dates for these future contracts really seem to be the trigger, the gamma for forcing buying each quarter. And if this happens this quarter to coincide with a number of other factors that are pretty gnarly for the economy, then they might not be physically able to short the stock again after September 9th. They might lose that ability because their entire assets are being liquidated to force to buy back the stock, because they won't have cash on hand, they won't have capital. Their bonds might be worth a fraction of what they were, and I don't think they can push it off forever. And if they manage to like get through September 9th, then they got to do it all over again December, at the end of November. So, December for the beginning of January, and these things just can't last forever. There's no way they can kick that can down the road and take on trillions of more in debt every single solitary quarter and pretend like everything's fine. I don't think it can happen. And if they manage to get through December, then it's the February, March one all over again. So yeah, it's a cycle, man. It's happening. Okay. Dope way. So sorry. Where is this? I missed it. Oh, Thomas Samoa says dope whale shirt with Maori Pro. Yeah, I got some outrigger canoes on here, and so the canoe's going along. This is the whale going underneath. It's a pretty awesome shirt. I like it. It's beautiful. Yeah, good shirts. I always have good shirts. You guys know that. Even my worst shirts are better than most of your best shirts. Got Wallace Lockhart. I love dogs. I have a beagle. I like turtles. Do you think Metamaterial will squeeze with GME AMC at the same time? Cheers from Transylvania. Count Dracula undercover. Man. Metamaterial is a weird thing, man. I do think that there's tons of shorts that have been made, especially with Torchlight. Because Torchlight went from, however many dollars down to 21 cents at one point, because they're just getting shorted like crazy. And with good reason. They're getting shorted like crazy with good reason, because last year oil prices collapsed, and the required price of oil per barrel was below the production cost of their 200,000 acres of oil rights. So, doing that merger with Metamaterials made sense for them. But I don't think the shorts ever counted on that merger happening, and that they would have to find the hundreds of millions or billions of shares that they had naked shorted on Torchlight to have to buy it someday. So if that's the case, then Metamaterials tied in with BlackBerry and Bed Bath & Beyond and Naked and Clover and whatever else happens to be in that mess of over-shorted stocks that were naked shorted or tied into these weird equity swaps that hedge funds are doing and just kind of trading around. So we're just in a really weird place. I think if you have a stock that has a significant short interest, when the MOASS happens, the price of those things are going to go up. That's just how it's going to roll. And we just got to sit back and ride that wave, because we're not the power brokers in this situation. And we're just like little sucker fish attached to the shark. And we're just going to nom, 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 eat up whatever it is that shark is gnawing on, and run with it. Muni Mike, thanks for the super chat there. Did I miss any others in that? I did not. Okay. So, yeah, my internet keeps coming in and out. This is awful. My friend John sent me a link to a Reddit article where a guy made a Raspberry Pi that's continually doing speed tests on his Comcast internet, and whenever the internet drops below the speed that he was guaranteed that he's paying for, it sends a tweet directly to Comcast telling him, This is what I pay for. This is the speed I'm getting. You suck. I should make one of those. That's sucker go. The problem is isn't my download speed, it's my upload speed. I'm supposed to get like 10 megabits upload, and the best we ever get is 5. And then whenever I do my show, it's like 200K. I'm like not much better than dial up. Comcast, you're such a jerk. So Comcast does suck. Andrew Lai, Andrew Lai, are the large investors using equity swaps to hide short interest, or are they using swaps as a way to double the effect of a short on stock price? Yes. I think they're doing both. So these hedge funds are using these equity swaps because the shorts, the naked shorts, the synthetics, are technically owned by a prime broker or a big institution like Citadel, these market makers. And then the hedge fund sort of leases the rights to these shorts and the benefits and liability to them. But the market maker doesn't have to report the short interest. And the hedge fund, because technically they're buying like a securities derivative or leasing a securities derivative, they don't have to report the short interest. So that's how we're getting so many shares out there trading around without those shares ever actually being reported. And so when Ehor and guys from S3 and Ortex and whatnot report on the short interest, they're reporting on the few hedge funds that may not have access to these tools. They may not be able to create these synthetic prime brokers and weird things like that. And so they naked short using the temporary market maker status or failure to deliver. And when they get to those FTD due dates, that's when they go out and they borrow a bunch of shares. And that's the short interest we're seeing. The one hypothesis is in the link that I posted in the description, is that Melvin got so cocky with dumping GameStop that at one point they're like, screw it. And they just started naked shorting without even worrying about these equity swaps. So they naked short, and that's why you saw like a 226% short interest on GameStop just before the baby squeeze in January. And that's when Melvin got absolutely burned. And so Melvin had to use the huge injection they got from Citadel in 0.72 to sort of mask their position and claim that they covered, when in reality what they did was they bought a whole bunch of dumps, deep out of the money puts, and they just bought a whole bunch of these things for the reg show purposes. Say, oh yeah, there's shares out there, we've got it, and that's why they're still down like 50% on the year, because they just lost money. Yeah, that's. And if I'm getting some of those little details wrong, correct me. I have to read that thing like 5 more times to really understand it. But yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal assembly of research in that Reddit post. I highly recommend it. Read it 10 times. Okay. CC asks, if during the squeeze, what would we know and how would we know it if the MOASS or just regular squeeze? Are candles going to look differently? What should you look for? The way my brain is kind of looking for that giant red flag is when the price gets stupid, right? When the price gets beyond what retail investors can FOMO into it. You'll get the people on the internet who go, GameStop's in the news again? Maybe I should buy some shares. You might see the price shoot up a few $100s in that case. That's what was happening with the baby squeeze. Baby squeeze was all FOMO. It wasn't forced buybacks by hedge funds. And when the price gets beyond what retail investors can do to like jump on board, then it's probably all trading computers doing the forced buybacks of these stocks. And that's when the price will go nuts. How fast it will go nuts depends on if they turn off the circuit breakers or not. If the circuit breakers stay on, then it can take a while to get through all of this. If the circuit breakers are turned off, then we might see a huge jump in price pretty quickly. And it'll probably sustain and bounce up and down for several days or weeks while they try to buy back the billions of shares that they shorted in all these stocks. They have to buy back billions of shares in AMC, buy back billions of shares in GME, they buy back probably billions of shares in BlackBerry, buy back billions of shares in Clover or Rocket Mortgage, they buy back billions of shares in Cost. So they're buying back just billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of shares. So we're going to have to see, what the volume is like when that forced buying occurs. And it's all up to you and whatever estimations you have as to when you should sell when you think they've bought enough of those shares to close those positions. Because that's the goal. That's the goal of the clearinghouses, is they want to close those positions, get it over and done with and gone. And it's probably going to create a whole new market for weird junk bonds and bonds where, the Fed or the Treasury or someone's going to print a bunch of money, and they're going to print that money and give it to these banks and prime brokers, and those banks and prime brokers have to use it to buy back all these stocks, and then they're going to owe that money to someone, and so it's going to be a whole new probably weird bubble that forces something else down the line. So what I'm looking for is the price to get stupid, and then I'll start looking at the volume and see what the volume's doing each day and trying to add that up to where I think GameStop, I think 1.7 billion shares is a safe bet that's kind of how many they created. It might be more, that might be 4 billion. I don't know. But if you wait too long, you might miss it. And if you might miss it, then you might not get the chance to retire. So, I don't want to wait too long. I want to retire. I want to just go drive around and smash rocks, because that's fun, and go camping a lot with my dog, and maybe 10 more dogs. I don't know. We'll see. Let's be all dogs. All right. Internet, you're such a dick. My goodness. All right. I'm losing 50% of my frames, so Streamlabs is telling me, because my internet is so garbage. I'm sorry, folks. Sorry, my internet is absolutely just awful. And I can't get anything better. The CenturyLink or whatever they became. What company did they become? Like Hoobstank? I don't know. Their internet's even slower. And then I can get fiber optic. It's like right 50 feet away from me on the road. And it's $10,000 to take it from the road to my house. So post MOASS, I can maybe get fiber optic. Maybe if I buy my own fiber optic, I can go on Alibaba and buy 50 feet of fiber optic cable and be like, here, use this. And then maybe it'll be cheaper to connect from my house. But, yeah. Internet, you're such a jerk. Okay. Broken Brainstorm asks, why would they turn off circuit breakers? Mainly because the goal is to close out these positions as fast as humanly possible. And you don't want this to go on forever, because the longer it goes on, the crazier the price will be, and the more the market, the Dow, will just tank and tank and tank and tank. You want to get this over with, clear the books, and then be like, hey, everything's better now. We can start, we can start the economy back up, and then the Dow can start doing its climb, and people can get their, their Vanguard funds back and whatnot. So that's why they would want to turn off the circuit breakers. They just want to get it over with as fast as possible. Apollo God, Houston Wade, if you could buy one crypto besides Ethereum and Bitcoin, what one would you choose? I don't know, something like Zcash or Dashcoin, Litecoin. Some of the ones that seem like they got their act together. XRP, ones that actually get used for stuff and have a purpose. Like Litecoin and XRP, those are used like for banks to transfer money back and forth across continents and stuff, across national borders. So those are probably the ones that were pretty standard. I mean, the shit coins, those won't be used for anything. They're just there as like ironic hipster jokes. They may still see like squeezes and pump and dumps and stuff, so you can still make money off them, but I don't see them ever becoming standardized. Deck P, Super Chats. Post MOASS, will the U.S. government bail out or buy in the likes of JPMorgan at all? I've been wondering which investment bank or banks is going to be sacrificed, because we went from 5 investment banks in 2008 to 3 today. And if we keep consolidating these investment banks, the economy's in trouble. We need to have more than 5 investment banks. We probably need to have a dozen of them in the United States, just because you need that competition. So I don't know if they'll let these investment banks die or if they'll full on save them. Citadel a couple years ago was trying to become an investment bank. They had were doing the work to try and get approval to become an investment bank, and the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Fed were like, you guys are the most unreliable crooks. You know, like JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs, those guys are crooks, but you are an embarrassment of how crooked you are. And so they said, don't even try. Don't do it. So that's when Citadel made the big move to become this mover and shaker for the payment for order flow networks for retail investors. They move so many shares through there, and they just peel off, those little fractions of a penny for all those trades. And so that's where they moved into, because they were not going to be allowed to become an investment bank. So Griffin stopped trying and went this route of becoming like market maker extraordinaire. Christopher Sawchuk, our lodestones awesome. Oh boys, look at some lodestones. Gotta go there. Gotta go to lodestones. Look at some pictures. Oh shoot, I forgot to put that in scene. I gotta go. Oh, dang it! Stupid Chrome. There's lodestones. Okay. Boom. Turn off Google Earth. There we are. Okay. So lodestones are like big magnetites. They're big, beautiful magnets. They are awesome. So these are very iron-rich stones. They're very magnetic. You can find tiny ones like in beaches and stuff. They get concentrated at the high tide marks, and that's also a great place to find gold. So the black sands, like when you talk to a gold miner, they'll talk about black sands. Those are little tiny sand bits of magnetite or little pieces of lodestone. And lodestones are just iron rich, and they slow cool, so their magnetic fields align with that of the Earth's, and they become magnets themselves. Some of them are quite big, but most of the time when you find them, they're going to be in like sand form. And you can go out in your yard. You can go out with a big magnet in your yard, just sweep it around, and you'll pull up little bits of magnetite everywhere. And then there'll be a pain in the butt on your magnet forever. But they are cool. They are really cool. So if we do, well, what are you whining about there, buddy? Are you a bored dog? I'm sorry. Let's do black sands. Mining. Okay. So here's mining beach sand. So in beaches, you get these little waves of black sand. So when big waves come in, they easily pull away the light fluffy sand, like the quartz-based sand. They pull that away and they leave behind the heavier sands. And so you can get really rich deposits of black sands. And in these really rich deposits of black sands, you get lots of heavy minerals. You'll get garnets and other small gemstones, and you'll get gold and platinum and lead. And so you can go out to the coast in a lot of gold-rich areas, and you can actually pan these black sands and get gold out of them, pretty significant amounts. When miners got to Gold Beach in Oregon, so if we bring up Google Earth, let's put you up here and go to Gold Beach, Oregon, which is here. Where's Rogue River? Is that Gold Beach? Am I looking in the right spot? Reedsport, South Jetty. I might be at the wrong river here. Gold Beach, Oregon. There we go. Oh, I was one too far north. Oh, too far. Two beaches too far north. Okay, so this is where the Rogue River comes out, and in the 1800s, the beach sands here and these sandbars especially were just taking gold that was coming out of these river systems for millions of years. The ocean would pound them to powder, and then they get concentrated in the black sands of these beaches. The gold miners, when they came with their gold pans and like scooped them into the sand, they were doing almost an ounce of gold per pan because of the millions of years that the ocean had been concentrating that gold into these black sands. It was absolutely nuts. You could stick your hand in it and find the gold pouring out. So they mined the hell out of these beaches for like 20 years until there was basically nothing left. So that's why it's called Gold Beach. In Washington State, we've got quite a few gold-rich beaches, and you have to get a special permit to mine gold sands in Washington. You got to apply with like the state legislature and stuff. But the last mine was off of Lake Ozette, Forks. Here we go. So the last active mine on the beaches was off Lake Ozette here in northwestern corner, and that was grandfathered in until the 1980s, and then they finally put an end to it. Really hard to get to though out here. I mean, this is as wild as it gets in the United States. And then I will go and I'll mine a little bit ocean shores, sometimes in Westport in the wintertime, because that's when the big waves come in is in the winter, and that's when the black sands will get more concentrated. I've got, what book is it? It is one of these little pamphlets. Mining in Washington, that's Nevada. Where's my Mining Olympic? Where are you? Is it you? Nope, you are Chemtrails. Shoot. I have a book, might not be on the shelf, that's about like mining the Olympic Peninsula, and in Oyahut, which is actually way down here. It is Iwako down here. So the beaches down here, there are people that in a 3-month period in the summertime were pulling out like $50,000 in gold turn of the century, and that's when gold was like, $50 an ounce. So multiply that sucker by what, 40, and that's how much money they're making. So a couple, not too bad, a couple $1 million. And so, but the problem is that by the 1970s, a whole bunch of people were not doing their mining, like panning or digging through the sand. They were bringing out giant trucks to the beach and filling those trucks up with sand and then driving away with it and processing it off site, which was just destroying the beaches. It's one thing to like dig a hole in the sand, and then at high tide, the hole fills right back up again with all the sand that you had made a pile with. It's another thing to like take the sand away. That affects razor clams and other local life, and it causes coastal erosion and makes things more dangerous. So they put a stop to that, and there was a ban for like 40 years on beach mining. And then in 2009, the Washington State Legislature opened beach mining back up to 10 people. And I was one of those 10 people to get the permit to go out there and mine beach sands. That's kind of like a test to see, okay, you can use this equipment, you can't do these things, and you can only go on these certain beaches, and you must, tell the park rangers when you're there so they can monitor you and all this stuff. So they did that for a couple of years, and then they opened it up to other people to start doing it. And you can actually use water pumps and stuff now. So I like to go to places like Copalis here, and I can use the fresh water here. I can put a pump in, and I can dig a big hole in the beach and pump water and use a sluice box. So I use a big battery and electric pump to pump that water, and then I can go through my beach sands. And in the wintertime, I can go out there, and some days I can do more than an ounce of gold in like 6 hours. So that's not bad. The problem is that in the winter, you need to worry about storm surge. You've got limited daylight because it's the winter. Rogue waves. If the weather's terrible, you don't want to be out there. You have to make sure it's low tide during daylight because you don't want to be out there at night, especially because not only is it cold, miserable, but then rogue waves can come in and just kick your ass, and then there's no one there to help you. So really the window in the wintertime to go mine these things is pretty narrow. There was that Bering Sea gold group that was up in Nome. Where's Nome? Nome. I might have my totally wrong spot. Nome, Alaska. Oh, that's the right spot. Okay. I'm usually pretty good with the maps here. I do have a degree in geography. So Nome is where a big river system comes out, and there is a bunch of gold all along the beaches here. So every summer, all these weird camps set up, and there's like mining claims and stuff all along the beaches, and people mine for gold and do a lot of it. And you got this daylight for 24 hours. They just mine for as many weeks as they can until it gets too cold and too dark again. But the thing is that there are other. You don't need to like just come here to mine these beaches. There are river systems that take really gold-rich areas, mountain ranges, all over Alaska, and just dump gold into these waters, and they concentrate on the beaches. So, there's lots and lots and lots of gold in beach sands. It's pretty fun. If you get a gold pan, go to your local beach and just find the black sands and see if you can pan anything out of it. You might only get a couple of flakes depending on where you are. But if you're near the mouth of a river that comes out of some significant mountains, you might actually have quite a few flakes in there. The guy who invented the clean gold sluice, Dave Plath, he's in Lincoln City, which that's Tillamook. Lincoln City, I think, is further. Pacific City, Lincoln City, there we go. He's down here in Lincoln City, and there's great gold along these beaches, and he can do, in one pan of black sand from the beach, you can do over 1,000 flakes of gold in one pan, because the rivers just dump gold all day long. And there's also gold pouring out. So in the spreading ridges out here, these spreading ridges where the Juan de Fuca plate is separating from the Pacific plate, these vents are incredibly hot, and there's tons of heavy metals that come out of there. You get mercury, lead, gold, arsenic, things like that. And that gold falls, floats around and descends and falls into the seafloor. And as this plate moves along, chugga, 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 this thing here is what's called an accretion prism. So a lot of the stuff on the seafloor gets scraped off like a squeegee and then piled up, and then the wave action starts to concentrate that on the beaches. So not only do you get gold coming out of the river systems, you get gold coming out of these spreading ridges as well and collecting in this accretion prism, which then gets concentrated by wave action on the beach line itself. So there's lots of ways to get gold to come to these areas. And I just realized I went on like a 20-minute tangent, and all Christopher Sawchuk had to do was say, "Isn't lodestone cool?" All right. Back to the phones. Okay. I totally missed. There's Christopher Sawchuk's question. Bullish. Great run yesterday, over 2,000. Pretty awesome. Would you say someone covering was some... sorry, this might be worded weird. Great run yesterday, over 2,000. Pretty awesome. That's the thing about the charity. Yes, that was awesome. Would you say some covering was done, hence the price action I talked about yesterday? Good sir. I don't think covering of the positions was done. I think meeting obligations for those quarterly futures contracts is getting done. My guess is that's where I think that's where a lot of that buying we saw happen was coming from. And that might be from someone jumping in a little bit earlier than they normally would for such a gamma, because it seems to be happening earlier and earlier before that set date of September 9th, or I think it was January 7th before, or sorry, June 7th before that, and March whatever before that. So I think that's where we're seeing the price action coming from. That's what was driving it. we may see a few more runs at the end of this week and next week as these futures contract folks need to buy in and cover. And that's going to squeeze the price and make it go higher, and then we benefit, man. There we go. Okay. There's Bullish. Here is Chris Smitty. Take my money, gold, man. Thank you for super chat. Israel Rodriguez, do you think MOASS will still hit 100,000 a share? Oh yeah. I mean, this is the whole point of that infinity pool. I mean, they say infinity pool, but in reality, it is people holding on and wanting the biggest price they possibly can. And if a whole bunch of people do that, then shirt's coming unbuttoned. I'm undressing in front of you here. Then that is what's going to drive the price higher and higher, because they need our shares, especially if they've shorted, billions of them, and there's only a few million that actually exist. They have to buy again and again and again and again, and they're going to need pretty much every share possible to close out all those positions. So that's why I think it will be, well beyond 100K a share for some of these stocks. Josh Pet Pals, Tennessee. Can you explain what the actual disagreement about Pluto was? Man. Okay. Let's see if I can bring up a good image of orbital paths of planets and dwarf planets. Let's see if we got images here. Oh, sorry, I need to bring up the I always forget to do this. Take off Google Earth. Okay, here's a good one. Maybe this one. Okay, so the way a star system forms is you get this big cloud of gas. The big cloud of gas condenses and forms a star in the center. And as the result of that rotation of the gas cloud as it shrinks, it spins out this disk of dust. And inside that disk of dust, the planets form. And those planets, they clear out their own lane and their orbital path of all the dust. They gather it all up, and the planet gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it does so. And the way they defined a planet, this was Neil deGrasse Tyson and folks aligned with him. They made the definition of a planet much more precise, saying not only does a planet have to orbit the sun, but it needs to orbit the sun in the plane of the rotation of that solar system. And that planet needs to dominate its own orbital path, meaning it can't have another planet dictate how its orbital path takes place. And so if you have a planetoid that isn't round, it's not round, it's not a planet. If you have a planetoid that is off kilter, too much from the plane of that solar system, it's not a planet. If you have a planet that is too elliptical and it crosses the paths of other planets, it's not a planet. So if you have a planetoid that its orbit is defined by that of another planet, it's not a planet. So with Pluto actually crosses the path of Neptune. At some point, it's off the plane of the galaxy by 20%, and its orbit is defined by Neptune's orbit. So Neptune goes around 3 times, so every time Pluto goes around once, mathematically perfectly. And so Pluto was determined, it's too elliptical, it's off kilter, it's too small, and its orbit is dominated by that of Neptune. So Neptune is the one that dictates what Pluto does. Therefore, Pluto is a planet. It is a dwarf planet or a planetoid. It's considered a Kuiper Belt object. And the reason why we found Pluto was purely by accident. We had astronomers looking out at the plane of the ecliptic, which is the plane of our solar system where all the planets, do their orbiting thing. And Pluto just happened to be crossing the plane of the ecliptic in 1939 when they saw it. And but it was crossing at a 20-degree angle. And so they called it a planet, like, oh my gosh, the planet. And they just happened to find it by accident. Since then, we found like hundreds of these things. We found ones that are even bigger than Pluto and that have more moons around them and stuff like that. So Eris is one, Xena, Sedna, Xerxes, Gabrielle. We've got so many of them because there was this planetoid search that started happening where people were just not looking for planets in the plane of our solar system, but they started looking at different angles to see what was out there, and we found all sorts of weird ones out there. We found one that looks like a giant oval that kind of flips along like an egg being thrown through the air. There's a lot of them out there, and they have weird orbits. They may have been moons or planetoids that were forming in the early solar system, but they got thrown out by the gravitational acceleration of another planetoid going by. They may have been knocked off kilter by collisions and all sorts of things. So that's why Pluto isn't a planet. There's only 8 planets. Pluto got downgraded to a planetoid, to a Kuiper Belt object, and that's where we are. Yeah, so there you go. And there's Ceres, which is in the asteroid belt. Ceres asteroid. I can't spell. Correct me. There we go. So Ceres is round. It orbits in the plane of our solar system. It's differentiated, so it's got the light stuff on the outside and the heavy stuff on the inside. It has a lot of the hallmarks of a planet, but because it is inside the asteroid belt and has not cleared out the entire path of the asteroid belt, it is not a planet. That's basically why Ceres is considered just a big asteroid, basically inside the asteroid belt. So there we go. All right. Big Houston. Bing. Okay. So there you go. There's Josh Pet Pals. There's your why Pluto is not a planet explanation. All right, let's jump back into the chat here and see. Apollo God says, may I suggest the next charity for the blind and sight impairment disability? I have family in that situation, and it would be nice to donate with you and others towards it. Works for me. Let's do a charity for blind and sight impairment in September. So some Tuesday in September. Maybe it'll try to make it regular. Maybe like the 4th Tuesday, we can do Charity Tuesday. Let's do that. Sounds good to me. I'm all for it. Let's help some blind folks navigate the world. Awesome. All right. Yeah, Apollo God. That's fantastic. Good idea. It takes a while to find one like a charity. Like there's lots of charities out there, but there aren't necessarily always good ones. So it gives me some time to like research, a good charity for the blind that doesn't spend too much of their money on, their CEO and more money on the actual people they're supposed to help. So I'll try to find a really good one that we can donate to. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? I have to tell you also, I've got a hard timeline. I have to be off here at 3:55 because I have a Zoom call with the department director at 4 about this coming quarter and what classes we're teaching and how we're doing them. So I do have to be off at 3:55 today. So that's hard for us. J-Dog, is it really possible to do the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs? Okay. This is the thing I appreciated most about Solo, a Star Wars story, is, all right, a parsec is a unit of distance. So the way Han Solo said it originally in Empire Strikes Back, I think it was Empire Strikes Back where he did the Kessel run. No, maybe it was New Hope. He talks about, I did the Kessel run in 12 parsecs. Was worded in such a way that it really pissed off astronomers. They're like, parsecs is a distance. It's not a time. How on earth do you rectify that? And they did the Kessel run in Solo, and the way they did it was brilliant. There's like a gas cloud and asteroids and blocks of ice, all sorts of things. And there's a set path you have to take to get out of that gas cloud. And the distance is normally more than 12 parsecs. And Han Solo took a gamble and did a path that was less than 12 parsecs, but was more dangerous. I was like, that is such a genius way to finally alleviate the pissed off astronomers. I mean, this is like saying, man, did you do that mile on 5,280 feet? That's impressive. And they managed to change that in such a way that it was brilliant. I am in awe of, I mean, the guy that played Han Solo was a terrible actor, but that part was brilliant. Donald Glover was genius, though. Donald Glover is an absolute master. But I really appreciate how they explained the Kessel Run and how they did it in 12 parsecs. So a parsec is a little more than 3 light years in distance, and it has to do with if you're watching a couple days ago when we talked about the astronomical distance ladder, and there's a thing called parallax, and if you hold your finger out in front of your eye and you close one eye, the background looks one way, and you open the other eye and you go back and forth between these eyes and you watch your finger kind of bounce back and forth. You can make a triangle, two right triangles from your eyeballs to the bridge of your nose out to that object, and you can do trigonometry to figure out how far away your finger is. And you can do that with stars. If you got stars that are essentially infinitely far away, you look at a star that's in the foreground, and when the Earth is on one side of the sun, you take a picture of that star, and when it's on the other side of the sun, you take a picture of that star, and you can go back and forth, and you can make a triangle and calculate the distance. So a parsec has to do with how far a star has to be away to be, I think it's like, 1/10,000th of a degree difference is a parsec. That's when you get to like 3 point something light years. I don't remember the exact way they measure it, but it's related to that, what the exact number is. And so we measure lots of distances in space via parsecs rather than light years, because it gives us a good idea using that trigonometric function to figure out how far away something is based on how many degrees it changes according to background stars. So when someone says 12 parsecs, what they really mean is like 36 light years and change. So there you go. All right. A1 Sauce, Houston, can you explain what possibility could have happened today after that great run up yesterday? I think what happened today is probably the folks that got in early to cover their futures positions did so yesterday, and we'll probably see some more jump in as the days go on and that window starts to close. That's when we've seen these big jumps in price in these stocks. So and they get more brutal and more gnarly each time. So whoever bought yesterday probably got the screaming deal for the week. Those that will buy in later will be screwed, because the price jumped enough that a whole bunch of options are going to go in the money by Monday. So we're going to get the gamma squeeze from that, as well as the people trying to buy to cover for these options. So there we go. Okay. Apollo God, didn't Michael Burry go short on something like Tesla? Is he still betting on it going down because it's only gone up since he made that bet? And what was the other prediction against Kathy? Kathy Woods is her name, I think. Kathy Woods made some good plays, but she's one of those people that's like, this is going to last forever. And so she refuses to ever look at corrections in the market. And so Michael Burry is butting heads with her because he's like, no, the market has to correct. And she's like, no, the good times will never die. And so that's kind of where they're butting heads. I think Burry was right to want to short Tesla. The problem is that Tesla got short squeezed because Tesla is a cult of person. Elon Musk is a cult of personality. And so people like follow him like a god and will do whatever he says. And so they bought his stock and held. So they've been in a permanent long short squeeze going on for a long time. So Burry came on the wrong side of that. And the reason why I said it was like fundamentals looking at Tesla is a good short, because Tesla's completely inflated. They're like not even the top 40 car manufacturers in the world. They do not build as many cars as, no-name companies never heard of in India that are building cars. Tesla makes fewer of them. But what they are is fantastic branding. And that's what people are buying into, the speculation, the branding. The issue that Tesla has is, well, it's a couple of them. One is that they aren't coming out with new models fast enough. Two is other car companies that have, 100 years experience building and perfecting vehicles and have gigantic supply chains and global networks and, logistics and dealerships and all sorts of things. They are now producing world-class electric vehicles, cheaper, and some of them better than what Teslas are. Oh shoot! I keep kicking this. All the cables are all over the place here, and I keep kicking them. I'm sorry. These so they're facing much steeper competition with cars that, let's be honest, might be superior to Teslas at this point. The Model S and those things are a few years old now, and they are no longer cream of the crop, and no longer the most badass things on the market. You've got Ford and Porsche and Audi and Volvo and GM and Volkswagen, and we've got all these major car companies now doing huge pushes in the electric car market, and they're just producing badass cars, and Tesla's going to compete with them, and so I think that's where Burry was coming from. The problem is that a whole bunch of short hedge funds did the same thing, and they did the same thing as a giant group, and they never took into consideration the cult of personality of Elon Musk being a factor, and that, I think, bit him in the butt. So that's the Tesla situation as I see it with Burry and others. Okay. Let's see here what we got. What we got in the question land. Protege Son, do you think Atlantis was real? No. All right, let's go to Google Earth. Small Houston, Google Earth. Come on, up here. There we go. So go to Google Earth. We zoom out. Okay, just looking off the Pacific coast here, we can see in the ocean we've got little bumpy bumpies. We got these big fracture zones. We've got spreading ridges. We've got seamounts galore. All these ancient little cities. We even have big lost continents. So there's big lost continents off of New Zealand that have been buried by ocean water. We've got huge continental shelves. Like when the ocean levels drop, Papua New Guinea and Australia are connected and it becomes a much bigger continent. We've got, same thing happens with the inland seas here between Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. We've got sort of the Seychelles, the granitic Seychelles are big chunks that were broken off of India when India slammed into Asia. We've got out here in the Atlantic, we've got some more oceanic volcanoes, the Cape Verde Islands, the Caymans, the Azores. But what we don't have is we don't have like a lost continent of Atlantis. We don't have anywhere where the folks from Europe, where this rumor or myth came about. We do have some shallow areas in the North Sea, in the Baltic Sea, English Channel, that may have been exposed during previous ice ages. The coastlines may have extended outwards quite a far ways in these regions. So, we may have had Denmark connected to the rest of Scandinavia physically, not just by bridges. And so we may have had regions in there. There may have been maybe a couple of little islands or coastal areas. Dang, there's a really loud truck going by. Shut up! Get a muffler. We do have evidence of cities that fell into the sea after earthquakes off of Egypt. We have evidence of settlements in the Black Sea that vanished when the Black Sea filled with water 7,000 years ago. Now, any one of those things could be Atlantis. Whether they were or not, I don't know. But so far, none of them have been called that when they can find relics from these things. And so Atlantis itself, I don't think is a lost continent. It may be, the collective story of a whole bunch of towns that got washed out by rising sea levels 9,000 years ago, or by the flooding of the Bosphorus in the Black Sea 7,000 years ago. It could be, an island that was visible when the sea levels were lower, somewhere in the Tyrrhenian Sea here, or off of Greece, that just water levels rose, they disappeared, and everyone just talked about, oh, this lost ancient city, and then the myth grew from there. But as for specifically in Atlantis, that had technology we've lost forever, and this kind of myth that surrounds Aquaman and whatnot, meh. No, I don't believe in Atlantis. You gotta send a submersible to all these little seamounts and figure out what's in there, and I'll look at it then. Okay. Bing, bing. People talking about Pluto still. I'm a little boys behind on the chat here. Let's see what we got. Josh Pet Palace says the most fun you might have after the MOASS is not telling anyone that you're filthy rich, and then if somebody pushes you too far, you just leave, no fuss, just walk out. They'll never see you again. That's true. I mean, being that undercover billionaires, there'll be probably a lot of undercover billionaires out there after MOASS that just never know. They might live in a giant underground Bond villain cave, and you never know it. Okay. Oh goodness, there's so much chat going on. Let's try to get through here and see. Okay. Pluto was a dog like Monkey Butt, and Mickey Mouse as well. You know yourself. That's the difference. All right, Cater King, the more we hold, the higher it goes. And there are so many shares we bought that 100K is like a checkpoint in the video game. Yeah, that's Apollo God kind of explaining that the stock is just going to rocket. It's going to go absolutely bonkers. Let's see here. Any good... There's a lot of discussion with each other in here, and I'm trying to find specific questions geared towards the Houston. There you go. Fee rhymes with tree. Asks, what do you think the SPY and VXX are going to trend tomorrow and Friday? Do you think they'll take a dip? I'm hoping they take... I hope SPY takes a dip and VXX goes up, because I bought puts in SPY and I bought calls for VIX. But they're for October. So as long as, there's a market correction before October 15th, then hopefully those things will print for me. But I don't know if anything will be significant by this Friday. I think the significant stuff has to happen probably after Labor Day, when members of Congress start coming back to DC and can start arguing with each other about the debt ceiling. I think that's probably when we're going to get that anxiety in the markets today, as the debt ceiling crisis looms. And we'll see that in the news, and then that's when the market goes go, 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 go. And I sell my calls and puts and make a bunch of money off of them. And then I use that money to buy what I can at Gamestop before it rockets too high. That's my goal. Give me questions. All right. Oh, here we go. A whole bunch. What? All right. Even CMAC, what do you think about the Rishat structure in North Africa? Giant symmetrical dome crater. How do you think it was formed? We can go to that sucker. We can actually see it out here. Right there. Boom. Ta-da. Come on. Need to get... Oh, shoot. I forgot to turn on the... I'm an idiot. I always forget to do this. Scene. Google Earth. There we go. There it is. This, I think, is an ancient cryptovolcano, is the thing that I was told. Let's see if I can remember correctly. I believe it's a collapsed dome of a very spherical shield volcano. Yeah, you got rhyolites and gabbros. Gabbros would be. Oops, sorry, I don't have my. Turn off Google Earth. There we go. So we got rhyolites and gabbros. Gabbros are basaltic lava that never made it to the surface and slow cool, so more crystals come out of it. They kind of can look like little polka dotty type rocks, black with white polka dots. And we got lots of hydrothermal stuff. So this is probably a deeply loaded collapsed dome of something volcanic, be my guess. You got breccia. Yeah. Oh, kimberlites around there, huh? Really? Lava flows. Tufaceous rocks. That's basically, think of it as volcanic ash that's collapsed and turned lithified, turned to rocks. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, so it's not a collision. There's no shock metamorphism. So when a collision happens from outer space, these things hit and quickly change the structure of the crystals inside the rocks. So it's probably a collapsed dome of an earthquake area. And there's one here in the United States that's really similar. We'll go back to the Google Earth. Come on, Google Earth. Out in Big Bend State Park in Texas. So we got this one here, this big old collapsed dome. So this was a volcano, and the magma chamber disappeared, and it collapsed and then eroded away since then. We have one very similar in Big Bend State Park here in Texas. If I can find it. I think we are in here, if I remember correctly. Where are you, Big Bend? Am I in the right spot, Texas? This is where. There we go. Right there. So here's a similar one in the United States. This one there's a little crack here at some point in the volcano, and the lava flowed downhill, but it is a pretty similar structure. It's a big cryptovolcanic structure here in Texas. It's really similar to the Rishat structure in Mauritania in the Sahara Desert in Africa. These are not the result of collisions. They are collapsed volcanoes, big shield volcanoes. So basically, big volcanoes like these, like the island of Hawaii. It'd be like if all of a sudden the magma chamber shut off in Hawaii and all the lava just kind of drained back in the earth and the whole mountain just went clunk. You get the same type of thing from them. So that's why they look like that. So you can see that they look so similar to each other. Ta-da! Very similar. Kind of similar size, similar structure, and whatnot. They look different than big, not too different from big meteor impacts. But if you look at the rock specifically, they're not metamorphized from those impacts. All right. There you go. Hope that answered that question. Okay. William Morgan, why wasn't CPS ever called on Bruce Wayne? Because rich people get away with everything, man. Okay. Get real. What's happening? We have to ask Houston to get you back in. What happened? What's happening in the chat? Somebody having issues? DM me. I'll after the show. I'll look at what is happening. Resident Flea explains synthetics, i.e., if there are 100 legit shares of GME, but 100 new investors bought 100 synthetic shares, well, it'd be, excuse me, that would mean there are 200 shareholders. It should be 100. Thanks. Yes, synthetics are. Oops, let me turn myself big again. Synthetics are IOUs. They are. That's all they are. They're placeholders. They are, you know, you go to the movie theater, you put a jacket on the seat. That's a placeholder. It is not a human being. That jacket represents that there is a human being there. You're saving that seat for. It is. It's an unknown variable. Now, these IOUs, they can form several ways. They can form from borrowing a stock. So when you borrow a stock from an institution and sell it, that stock you borrowed, synthetics get put in place in the institution's account and gets recorded. They own that stock. It's recorded, and it's a synthetic. Synthetics get created when they're naked sold. So shares are naked sold, and a synthetic is created, and what's recorded on that synthetic is who owes on that IOU. Then there's synthetics that are generated by market makers. And these market makers will just print fake shares and then send them out in the market to keep liquidity flowing. And they're supposed to they're supposed to eventually go out in the market and find the real shares and replace them, but there's enough loopholes, they never do that. And what the market makers appear to be doing with this latest DD we've seen is that they're also generating a boatload of synthetic shares to put into these equity swaps for the hedge funds. The hedge funds can short these stocks without ever having to record short interest. So these synthetics are generated. Oh, and synthetics get generated by naked selling options. So if you're naked selling options, you are, let's say you're setting a call price for Gamestop at $1,000, right? You don't have the stock. You're thinking this stock's never get to $1,000. I don't actually have to buy the shares to cover this. And you might get to a point where, oops, the stock hits $1,000, and all of a sudden, the brokerage has to deliver those shares to a customer. What the brokerage will do is they'll go reach in and they will pull out a bunch of real shares, give that to the customer, and put synthetics in place for the ones they borrowed. So that's another way synthetics get generated. And that's how we get more shares trading than should be in existence. And we need to put a stop to it. We need to have Congress make laws and make absolutely oppressive punishments if they do try to create synthetic shares illegally and in these nefarious ways. And we need to have the stock market actually reflect the supply and demand of these shares so that market forces actually work. We live in a false market economy. Everything that is being done is so fake and so wrong that there really is there's no fixing it at this point. We are broken until the whole thing corrects, and then the regulators can probably jump in and put a stop to all this stuff in the future. Dennis Vutos super chats, what company, if any, should GME purchase? What do you see as money for Metamaterial dividend? GME has every ability to go do some mergers. Rumors that they're going to purchase a gaming league and get into competitive gaming. I don't know if they'll purchase one or if they'll do some agreements, may buddy up with some gaming leagues and do that stuff. I think it is smart for them to go deeper into equipment manufacturing for like computers and video game systems. Even if it's just rebranding things like video cards. If you have a GameStop 380 GT Ti NVIDIA video card, people will buy it at the store and they'll put it in there, and you can sell it for $5 cheaper than other 3080 Ti whatever video cards out there. That would be an excellent way for them to enter that equipment market. Those things I think are smart. Beyond that, I think a lot of what they need to do is focus on becoming an e-commerce company and expanding from there, because the way brick and mortar currently isn't going to be sustainable for much longer. They're going to have to change those brick and mortar stores, which I think they've got plans to do, to kind of turn them into hangouts for people to do board games and Magic the Gathering and get beers and play console games and stuff, and less of a retail space, more of a community gathering spot. And I wouldn't doubt if they, set up LAN networks and have video game contests, so that, like Little League for kids. You can go to your soccer match on Saturdays, or you can have your kids sign up for some sort of computer gaming contest and do that on their Saturdays. I think that stuff. I think that stuff's very, very, very likely. Okay, what do I see as cash for Metamaterial dividend? I talked about this yesterday on my show, for the charity show. I bought Torchlight thinking that I was going to get $1 a share dividend out of it. That was pretty good if they issue a dividend, because I bought it at 87 cents, and if I get 500 shares, 87 cents, I can get $500 profit off of those shares. Cool. And then those shares become Metamaterial, and it becomes a long position for Metamaterial after that. That was what I bought into. And then oil prices started to rocket, and there's been lots of rumors about the value of the hundreds of thousands of acres of oil fields that Torchlight controls, and that now they are worth quite a fortune. And they have something like 200,000 acres. Let's go there, bring up the calculator, turn off the Chrome, turn off the Google Earth, and oh shoot, I turned off the calculator. Oh, there it is, calculator. Why weren't you on? Okay, they turned you off. There we go. All right, so I did this little thing, just quick little thing. So they've got 200,000 acres and change of oil leases, and when the economy had collapsed due to COVID, the value of those oil leases were very little, because they're in a type of shale that takes a lot more work, so you need high oil prices to make it worthwhile. And the value was only like $1,000 an acre. So, whoops, dang it. So if that's the case, if it's only $1,000 an acre, we're looking at $200 million that they would make off of selling those leases, and that's a little more than $1 a share. And that's what I was thinking it was going to be. Then info is coming out that now, because of the spike in oil prices, this stuff is worth a lot more money, and it might be worth. Clear. I've got 200,000 acres, so it might. Dang it! It might be worth 10,000 or more an acre. And if it's 10,000 an acre, right, we're looking at $2 billion, and $2 billion spread across 145 million shares is going to be $13.79 per shareholder of Torchlight. So you get a special dividend of like $13 and change if it's $10,000 an acre. There's another rumor coming out that it was like $30,000 an acre was the potential price that they could get for these things. And so multiply that sucker by 3. So there might be, it's going to be at least $1 per preferred share, but it might be very much higher than that if they get a much more premium price due to oil prices shooting through the roof right now, making it much more economically feasible to suck oil out of the earth on that land. So that's the unknown we're in, is how much money are they going to get for those leases, and if it's a bunch, then we get a bunch. So we're just kind of sitting on that right now. Okay. Okay, 3:39. I got like 15 minutes left, and then I've got to do teacher stuff. Looking for questions. Oh, as I was reading a question, then it completely reset on me. Okay, Corey Ryder. Why should they be able to manipulate the market behind closed doors, yet we can't get together on the internets? That's because they're rich and we're not. Rich people have a different set of rules than we do. There's a reason why regular companies can be naked shorted, but financial institutions cannot. There's a different set of rules for those rich folks. And they're trying desperately to make sure they stay rich folks and we stay poor folks. And we're just kind of wait for this thing to flip. Because again, it's the first time ever where retail is the head of the curve and actually hedged for a market collapse. Normally, we're the ones left holding the bag, screaming about our 401ks evaporating. But this time around, I think we're actually geared for this war in a way that never was before. So a lot of these big time players, these big hedge funds, they are desperately trying to figure out how to get out of this, and I don't think they can. So that's why we're in this in the begin with. Okay. Looking for the questions. Ms. B, why wouldn't a company do a share recall? Do they cost too much to do? I don't know. I don't know what the cost of doing a recall is, and the couple of them that I've heard about were for these OTC stocks. I haven't heard of any big retail recalls for exchange trade stocks. So I don't know what's keeping AMC and GME from demanding it. It seems to me that there's enough evidence that they can demand one and force these buybacks to happen. I don't know. That might be a question for somebody on the board. We might be able to directly ask them, like, hey, why haven't you done a share recall? What's the deal? Is there a price problem? What's happening? Okay. All right. Rob Murphy, you should do a show where you call Comcast and tell them they're on a live show and explain how bad the service is and ask them what they're going to do about it. I bet they fix your shit. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Just channel my inner Karen, call up Comcast. And so unbeknownst to me, like I'll stream a movie, I'll play a video game here and there. But for the most part, we weren't abusing our internet service. And I guess when COVID hit and everyone was in the shutdown, the lockdown, Comcast did this thing for for 4 months, we're going to take off data restrictions, which I had no idea that I had a data restriction. I just thought you buy the internet and you get the internet, whatever. And so I was in the middle of Oregon last summer, and I got this notification that was like, hey, you exceeded your monthly allotment of internet usage, and it's going to cost you $10 for every 50 megabits or something. And I was like, what is going on? And I didn't really pay attention to it. And then the bill came when I got back from the Oregon Outback. So this is 4 months after they had turned off this limit, and discovered they only had 1 terabit limit for my internet, which I did not know that I had limits. And my roommate had gotten this subscription for his Xbox that for $1 for a month, he could download any video game he wanted and play it for that entire month. So he downloaded 20 terabytes of video games, and it cost $300. And I was like, what the hell? So I called Comcast. I was like, I'm going to cancel my service. I'm going with someone else. And the lady on the other end, of course, she's at home because COVID. She's not in the call center, and I can hear her like cats climbing all over her. And she's like, I'm going, gosh, I'm so sorry. And she looked at the data usage, and she was like, my God, I know families with 10 Mormon children that have never used this much data. What on earth was going? What are you? And it said, I've got a video game addict who lives in my home and downloaded like 20 terabytes of video games. And she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, we need to go this unlimited thing. So they upgraded my service to the fastest I can get at my house, and it's still garbage. So that's where we are. You're stuck with Houston garbage internet until I can afford to bring the fiber optic cable, the 10 gigabit fiber optic cable, it's 50 feet behind me, to my home, and finally use that. Comcast, you monster. Okay. GoFundMe for a new computer and internet connection. My computer's pretty badass. It's my internet connection that's garbage. And I don't know if a GoFundMe, if I would be able to raise the $10,000 it would cost to get me a new internet. Like, I don't know. I need to get that Starlink and SoftBank satellites overhead so I can get terabit Wi-Fi going. Okay. Got people talking about starting an ape news network. That's you know, that's what the power players do. They create their own news networks and they jump into that stuff. Fee rhymes a tree. They might be throttling my internet connection. So he's asking if I can call them and ask, or I could, maybe my roommates are just gobbling it all up by, I don't know, uploading the contents of their computers to the cloud for some reason. We will see. Christopher Arnold, Houston. When I was stationed in Iraq, I often flew over a ziggurat. What is the story behind these huge anthills? Let's look at a ziggurat here. Oops, I totally spelled that wrong. And I can't spell, save my life. Goodness gracious. Ziggurat. Oops, they bring up you. They bring up the Google Earth, bing. And we're flying, we're flying, we're flying, we're flying. Great ziggurat of Ur. So these were, I believe, religious temples for the Sumerians and Babylonians. So these are like ancient ruins here that, you know, we got ancient cities and temples and the foundations of these buildings. So these whoops, Ur. Come on, let's zoom out. Let's get back to Ur here. And that's why I believe I've only done my ancient history course and we only touched on this stuff. But I think Ur was a Sumerian site. I'm not sure which dynasty from that were built. But looks like we got little possibly ancient irrigated fields there. They're part of that. But these are all ancient sites that and they're all over the place in Mesopotamia here. So we've got the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers make for a nice lush irrigated area, and so Ur may have been closer to the banks of the river back in the past. But we can see irrigation channels. Some of them may be pretty ancient coming out here. Got a little Talil Airport. But yeah, so this whole fertile zone here was like thought to be where the Garden of Eden was. The rivers drain out of the Fertile Crescent up here. So the Sumerian, we got the Sumerians, we got the Semitic peoples, we got the Babylonians. They all were settled this area. And they were desert people, very dependent upon the rivers to irrigate their crops. They grew lots of wheat and barley, and some of the oldest known civilizations came from here. As to what exactly it was used for, I don't know. I think it was a religious site. That's what they were. There you go. So that's as much you're gonna get out of me without reading that Wikipedia article. Well, let's see here. What's the Wikipedia article say? Oh, you can't see it on your screen. It's just a white box for you. So it's from the Bronze Age. It's a Neo-Sumerian city of Ur, and so there's a big palace there, and so it may have been. Oh, that came up for you. Excellent. So yeah, I think this was a temple. That's what it was used for. Step pyramid. Yeah, temple complex. So it was also an administrative center for the city and a shrine to the moon. All right, there you go. Boom. That's what the ziggurats are for. Back to Google Earth. Back to Big Houston. And I got 5 minutes, folks. 5 minutes, and then I've got a Zoom call with my boss. What we got down here? Smooth Gutty Beats. GameStop's released their earnings on the 8th of September. That's pretty interesting that they're going to release them on the 8th. Maybe they know about the 9th being the set day you have to settle these positions for the futures contracts. That's maybe Ryan Cohn is much more of a genius than even we are thinking here. Yeah. J Dog asks, "What's your favorite time travel paradox?" Been Future Man binge. Future Man is a genius show. The first season especially is absolutely just killed me. It is so funny. I didn't know the kid who played PETA in those, what are those movies called? The one with Katniss, Hunger Games. I didn't know that kid was so funny. I just thought he was just some like pretty boy, be in movies for teenage girls type thing. Man, he is awesome. He is so funny. Time travel paradox. Well, man, there's a lot of problems with time travel. There's like, the whole Stephen J. Fry being his own grandfather. That one's pretty messed up. There's, going back in time, and it was the Hot Tub Time Machine where what's his butt becomes like the master writer of all these songs because he just stole songs from the future and pretended he was the guy who authored himself. I do wonder if like you go back in time and you kill your grandfather if you cease to exist, because that'd be one way to prove multiverse theory, is that if you can kill your own grandfather and he still exists, it might be that you're traveling through multiverses. So that's a good way to think of that. But Is it Cable One asks, which island would you recommend when moving to Hawaii? I really liked Kauai a lot. Living on the Big Island, while there's lots of cool stuff there, it was some hard living, especially in Hilo. There's like 25% unemployment. There's a big methamphetamine epidemic because the super factories smuggle their meth onto ships from Thailand. Their first stop is to come to Hawaii, and they just dump it there. So there's a lot of cheap methamphetamines, and it's a lot of crime. My brother refers to it as Crime Island. But Kauai was much more laid back, and didn't seem to be as struggling as hard as Hilo was. But on the other side of the Big Island, the leeward side, where all the tourism is a different story altogether. So goodbye, Ziggurat. We are going to go to the other side of the world again. Back to Hawaii. So, on the Big Island, where the rainforest is, used to be dependent upon sugarcane. All the sugar mills shut down, so a lot of people went out of work. Now, the industry in Hilo, there's some fishing. Mostly it's college related and related to the telescopes. So a lot of the observatories are based in Hilo. So there's a lot of scientists that come and work at the telescopes. But if you're coming to Hilo looking for a job, you're probably going to get one at like Walmart or something. There's tourism with the volcano, a little bit there. But most of the tourism, because the sandy beaches are on this side of the island and it's always sunny, So all the big hotels are over here. So there's a lot of people that live out in the jungle that drive into town and take a big giant bus. It drives around, drops them off the hotels, and then end of the night they come back. And it is a long, hard day for really low wages. But if you are one of the folks that live, like, you know, in one of the resort communities here, and your homes are like $25 million, and all you ever have are like rich people, or surrounded by rich people and servants all day long, life is pretty good. If you live outside that, it can be pretty rough. It's middle class existence in Hawaii can be pretty rough sometimes. Maui got the same thing. Out in Hana, rains a lot, with lots of sugarcane fields, not as many jobs now. And then the dry side of the island, Kihei and Lahaina and Wailea, these are like where the tourists are. Lanai is owned by what's his butt from Oracle. Molokai, if you're a white person, you go to Molokai, you're going to get your ass kicked. Oahu is a big giant city. Rich people live out in Kailua. Well, rich people live everywhere. But there's certain places like there's like Waimanalo. This is where Robin Masters' mansion was, but it's also Waimanalo. There's some pretty hardcore areas here. I'm gonna tell you this: if you're Hallie, if you're a white person moving to Hawaii, learn your place and respect the locals, because they can snap you like a twig, and they will if you piss them off. Like, step lightly. They'll be generous and nice to you if you're generous and nice to them. But if you come in trying to use your privilege to get something and it affects them, they'll just kick the shit out of you and no one will investigate. And so, like, tread lightly. Just don't be an asshole. Don't go to places where you're not invited. Don't tarnish or ruin or besmirch sacred places. You just be a nice person and just know that you are in someone else's space, and respect that. If you're going to start surfing and you never surfed before, don't go to the places where the big time badass surfers are. Go to the crappy waves that no one wants to be in, and you won't get your ass kicked by surfers. A lot of my living in Hawaii as a tall, lean, white dude was making sure that I didn't piss off the wrong people. And, you know, Polynesians, they can't hold their liquor. They're all gigantic, and they all do cage fighting. So you're not going to win against them. And they've got lots of cousins. So that's the thing to watch out about Hawaii. And just know that there's some people who have it really, really, really rough in Hawaii. Ever since the missionaries came and destroyed their entire lifestyle, there's been a lot of social and socioeconomic problems that have resulted from that. And land prices are insane. So you have lots of homeless living in cars and stuff that are employed. They're working at restaurants and hotels, and they have jobs, but they can't afford to live in an apartment. And so, you know, there's some issues in Hawaii. And then you have a whole bunch of rich people. They're like, I'm here at the beach, serve me. And there's a lot of resentment for that. So, oh crap, I gotta go. On that, I'm doing a show Friday, so I'll be there Friday. Can't do one tomorrow. I got work obligations. So I'll see you guys all then. And until then, let's get some green tomorrow and Friday. Let's hope. All right, bye bye.